Hey guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel Programming Knowledge. In today's Microsoft Excel tutorials video, we would be looking at some of the statistical functions in Microsoft Excel. So first of all, let us understand that what are these statistical functions. A simple definition of these statistical functions is that they are used to only display the result based upon some criteria. So a criteria or a condition, when it evaluates to be true, then only the result is displayed by these functions, and that is why they are known as the statistical functions. Now their definition you must have found similar to the if function in Microsoft Excel, which we have already learned about. Now that is exactly the case, and if we look at these statistical functions, then they could be divided into two broad categories. Now these are the single criteria statistical functions and the multiple criteria statistical functions, which you can just see over here. Now if we talk about single criteria statistical functions, we have three alternatives, that is the SUMIF, the COUNTIF, and the AVERAGEIF functions. Now as you can see that their names are self-explanatory, which means the SUMIF functions are used to find the sum of the data, the COUNTIF function are used to count the data, and the AVERAGEIF functions are used to find the average of the given data. But there are some constraints according to which they operate, and these conditions or these constraints are known as criteria, and they are evaluated using the if that is available as a postfix of these functions. So when we talk about SUMIF function, that is a simple combination of two functions that we have already learned in Microsoft Excel, that is sum and if functions. In the sum function, we just found out the sum of the given data, and in the if function, what we did was evaluate some kind of a condition and did some steps or performed some steps when the condition evaluated to be true, and some other steps were performed if the condition evaluated to be false. So that is the usage of the SUMIF function, and similar is the usage of this COUNTIF and the AVERAGEIF functions. Now that is about the single criteria statistical functions. Why are they called a single criteria statistical functions? It is so because their arguments are designed in such a way that they accept only a single condition and evaluate themselves only on the basis of the single condition. While if we talk about these multiple criteria statistical functions, then these functions can be evaluated on behalf of the multiple criteria that are given to them. And apart from that, they also have some kind of a different name. If you see that they are written as sum ifs, count ifs, and average ifs, which means they can be accepting multiple ifs as an argument, and one if accepts one criteria, that is why they can accept multiple criterias. Now these multiple criterias could be any number of the criterias, and they do not have any kind of a fixed number. Alright, now let's understand their usage in detail. But first of all, I'm just going to clear up this result area over here. So in this table we have got some criterias in front of us like this. The criterias are given, and we need to find out the result or the output we need to find. So for that we would be using these statistical functions, the single criteria and the multiple criteria functions. Alright, now from where these criteria are going to belong, these are going to belong from this table where we have three columns, the name column, days, and the data column, which means that out of these three columns only we have to get the data. So let's start with it. So our first criteria is that we need to find the sum if days is equals to Monday. Now if you look at the table, whose sum can you find? There is only one column, and that is the data column, whose sum can be found out. So that is why whose sum we are going to find, this data column sum. But what is our criteria? A criteria is this days column. This days column is our criteria. Alright, so we have two parameters in front of us, the days column and the data column. So how can we write this function? Similarly, what you have to do is select a cell, put an equal sign, and write SUMIF. Then first of all, it asks you for a range. Now this range is the criteria range, that from where you need to fetch your criteria. In our case, it's the days column. So just select this whole days column, put a comma, then it asks for the criteria. Now what is our criteria? Our criteria over here is the day equals to Monday. Now since this is a string value, so what we are going to do is put it in a double quotes. So just write it in double quotes, MON, close the double quotes and put a comma. Then the next argument that we have is the sum range, which is an optional argument. And why is it optional? Because sometimes the criteria range and the sum range are same. So in that case, you do not need to explicitly mention the sum range. But in our case, what it is different. The criteria range was this days column, but the sum range is the data column. That is why we need to explicitly mention it. So just select this whole column and close the parenthesis and press enter. So the answer we got is 6. If you want to just cross check the value, so here we have Monday as 3, then Monday as 2, and then Monday as 1, which means 6 is the answer, and that's the correct answer that we have got. Similarly, there is the second function, which is count if days equals Monday. So that is the same criteria, but it is going to be different because we are going to use the COUNTIF function. So just write COUNTIF, put a tab, then it asks for only 2 parameters. Now the third parameter is not present because the count function is used to count only the values if the given criteria is matched. Alright, so first it asks for range, and that is the criteria range only. So just select this criteria range, put a comma and apply the criteria, which is MON, and just like this and press enter. So we know that there are 3 occurrences of Monday, MON. That is why we have got the answer as 3. Now our third criteria is average if days equals mon, or we need to find the average if the days are equals to Monday. So this average if function has a similar structure to the SUMIF function. So how can we write it? Is put an equal sign, write average if. First of all, it asks for the range, which is nothing but the criteria range. So just select this range, which is your criteria range, put a comma, open the double quotes, then provide it with a criteria, which is MON, close the double quotes, put a comma, then it again asks for the average range, which is again an optional parameter, just like the sum range in the SUMIF function. And in this case, we are going to provide it with this data, and just close the parenthesis and press enter. As soon as you do that, you can see that you have got the answer as 2. How can you cross check it? A simple formula of an average is sum divided by count. So the sum we have got is 6, the count we got is 3, so 6 divided by 3, the answer is 2. And that is only possible because our given criteria was similar in all these 3 functions. Now for these 3 functions, what we had was the exact match of the criteria found in the table. We wanted to look for the days as Monday, and that's exactly what we got in our table. What if the exact data is not present and we have some relative information? Like over here, what we have in our criteria is sum if data is greater than 2. So how can we find the sum in this case? What we are going to do is just put an equal sign, right, the SUMIF function, then provide it with a range. Now sum if data is greater than 2, whose sum we can find? The data's sum we can find. And what is our criteria? Our criteria is itself the data. So in this case, our sum range and the criteria range is same, and we do not need to explicitly mention the sum range over here. So we are just going to use the 2 arguments. So just select this whole data column as the criteria range, put a comma, and then it asks for criteria, which is greater than 2. Now greater than 2, despite being a numerical value, is going to be written in double quotes. The reason behind this is because it is available with an operator. So it is treated as a string value only. So just write greater than 2, close the double quotes and close the parenthesis like this and press enter. Now as soon as you do that, you will get the answer as 10, which means that the data which is greater than 2 is 3 and 4, which is absolutely correct. 10 as the answer we have got. Now similarly, we have some other criteria, that sum if data is less than 2. So similarly, we are just going to write a function for this. This is going to be a criteria range as well as the sum range. The criteria here is less than 2, write it like this and press enter. So it's 3, which is 1, 1 and 1. Now up till now whatever criteria we had was available in the table. Now here we have a criteria like sum if data is less than 1, which has no occurrence in the table. So what would be its result? Let's find out. SUMIF, provide it with a range, which is this data column, put a comma and write the criteria, which is less than 1, close the double quotes, close the parenthesis and press enter. So it's 0, which means there is no data whose value is less than 1. And that is all about the single criteria statistical functions in MS Excel. Thanks for watching.